Um, Welcome everybody to TMAC, back in almost all remote. Crystal, I forgot to check. Do I need to read a statement now that we're all remote again?
No, we have an anchor location for those who want to come in person. So
Okay.
no, you don't need to read anything.
Nice. I like that. Laurie Urquiaga, TMAC member. Thanks for being here. Our Planning Commission representative, I should say. And David Harding, our council representative. Thanks for being here, Dave. And then also we'll welcome Quinn with Downtown Provo. Appreciate you joining us. And then welcome to all city staff and other visitors. Our first and only item, unless I missed a change, I think it was still the only item, is discussing our Center Street criteria and the projects that we ranked. So a major goal of today is to get some of your thoughts, Quinn, representing the downtown businesses. So have you been able to look at this at all, or is this still pretty fresh for you?
Both. I looked at it a lot a couple months ago.
Okay.
And while you're all looking at your computer screens, me and Robert are trying to print this out.
Okay.
So I can look at it more closely.
Okay. So we have some, at least a couple very specific questions, one in particular that I remember. But I also think it'd be good to kind of walk through the list together, possibly, unless you already have some thoughts you want to share to start.
There's one item on here I'd love to talk a lot about, but I'd love to just talk about all of them and prioritize with everyone. So let's see what questions you've got.
So the one question I know I want to start with is, we debated this a lot last meeting. If we make an improvement that removes parking, it makes downtown better in other ways, but it removes some parking. We're not talking about all parking. Imagine how on the corners some of the restaurants have some outside table space and things like that.
Yeah.
If we remove 3 to 5 parking stalls for more of that space, or if we remove half the stalls on a block to fit something like that, how do you believe downtown businesses would perceive that? Is the added amenity enough of an improvement that it's okay to lose a little bit of parking, or is any parking loss a problem?
It is funny how much context I have to share with you guys on all of these things, because these are all things that we've worked on before already. Wow, we could be here for a long time, but just the summary. My first question to you would be, first, why do we think we need to lose parking to make those amenities? Because one of our big pain points downtown, it is the downtown park is the most difficult park to maintain, because it's one of the oldest and it has all galvanized pipes under the asphalt and under the sidewalk. So these galvanized pipes are constantly breaking and dying. So why I'm prefacing this way, we have planters in the downtown that are constantly dead and full of trash. And it's very difficult for us to maintain them to a high enough standard instead of just looking like trash constantly. And I think it would be a great trade-off for a handful of these elevated planter boxes to be seating area, where we no longer have trashy planters, we have seating area, and we don't lose parking. That's top priority, would be fantastic solution, and I think that is achievable. Now, if for a number of circumstances that's not achievable, businesses would be willing to lose some parking. It just depends on the business and what the exact proposal is. We had some COVID funding at the end of last year to do this exact project, to build parklets. And that's why we did all this research. So engineering, it's a long chat, but they had some concerns about any of these being near crosswalks because it creates visual distraction for drivers. And unfortunately, everywhere that we have a restaurant that needs outdoor dining is by a crosswalk. And so it really crippled this ability for us to do anything. Anyway, I have a lot more to say. There's a little bit of context. What do you think? What have you already worked on?
So that helps a little, I guess. Well, I don't know. A lot of these things, as we were rating them, we felt like it was a positive thing for downtown. It would make it more attractive to go there. It would make it more comfortable to be there and hang out longer.
For sure.
And so we see that as a benefit. And of course, transportation is our focus, but we're looking holistically at safety and aesthetics and the experience. So that was just a core question where, hey, this improvement looks great, but we lose parking. So does that make it a net zero gain, or is it still a good improvement? What you've said just barely is that if we remove a non-contributing amenity for a contributing amenity is great, and I totally understand that. But if we have to lose some parking for a contributing amenity, is that net zero, or if done right, can it be acceptable and good?
Yes, it's acceptable and it's positive. And you're absolutely right. This is a priority. The outdoor seating downtown is a very high priority for us. It's for us, it's just a matter of how we pull that off now. Because it's a very high priority. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Which streets do you want outdoor seating on? Is it mainly Center, or is it also University? Could you be more specific?
Yes, it's mainly Center. University would be really great because those restaurants in that area struggle a little bit more because they already have very little walkability. The difficulty is they don't have any safe way to do it. The street is noisy. The street is high speed. The sidewalks are not very wide. There's just not really a reasonable place to do outdoor dining on University. We have talked with a couple of the restaurants over by like Ma's, Lucy's, Noodle King, Cultura, that little pocket. They have a funny alleyway behind their property where we've actually discussed putting down some recycled asphalt and stringing up some lights to do some outdoor dining. So we've been talking about this, but ultimately Center Street. Center Street is where it should and can happen.
Okay. Well, that definitely helps me because that was a question we debated last time. So it's good to know that it is possible to do that if the shoe fits, so to speak. So I don't know, the rest of TMAC, should we just go through the projects together now with Quinn and get any of his thoughts on them, or what's everyone else think?
There is one general question I'd like to ask Clancy that I've wondered myself that I think he could answer. As we look at things, there's things we can do to try to take Center Street all the way to the new city building, all the way to 5th and to the park. As I look at downtown, it's stronger, closer to University, and the businesses get weaker the further you go towards 5th. So as we look at decisions that we make, should we look at trying to activate Center all the way to 5th, or do you see that as not important currently, or maybe it would be in 10 years, or do you have a feel for that?
I think any strategy or decisions that we make should be consistent from 100 East to 500 West. One of the reasons that it does taper off a little bit currently is just because of the current city center building. The city center doesn't activate the sidewalk at all currently, but with the new McQuinney project that is redeveloping the street, that will change. So I'm not worried about any specific planning to cater one end or the other, because I think once the McQuinney project is finished, it'll be a level playing field all the way along Center Street. I think that is the solution, and that solution is already underway.
Cool, that's good.
So Quincy, in talking about this, I actually found your rankings really helpful, and I especially found it helpful to sort the entire list by what got the highest points. I'm not sure how you came up with the number of points for each item, but it did sort of shake things out for me. So I thought, I don't know if that's useful for the group or if other people did that.
Yeah, I'm glad it was helpful. So basically, I just did a weighted calculation where, based on the score we gave it and the weighting percent we assigned to each category, and then just multiplied it by 100 to give it a nice, round, interpretable number.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how the score was calculated. So yeah, would it be better to go through in order of highest score first, sort it by score, and work down the list maybe?
I think it would be helpful for me to have Quinn go through it with us in the same order that we came to it.
Okay.
Just for consistency's sake. And also, often there'll be several in a row that are related with slight differences that are nice to take together.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do this then. And then Quinn, just so you know, there's a lot, so I kind of push us along. So I'll keep doing that. And we also have to remember that we're not designing it right now. You know, we're talking generally where it goes or exactly how it looks will be worked out later. We try to stay a little bit more high level. So I'm going to skip the items that are done. Row 5 here, creating lead pedestrian interval. This makes it a little bit safer for pedestrians, but we didn't feel like that impacts businesses or the aesthetics much at all. Row 7, install slow and 15-mile-per-hour paint markings on the street. Again, we felt like this might improve safety a little bit, but wouldn't have much impact on the experience.
Clancy, sorry, do you want me to hide these middle rows so we can just see the total score? Or do
I
you want?
think that's a good idea.
Well, it helps me to see the score so I can explain what we were thinking, actually. But you could make them narrow. Yeah, you can make them really narrow, and yeah, that's fine.
I want to just give a little preface as we run through this, just to give you guys a little bit of context and some of the thoughts process we're having right now with some of our strategy and discussion. Utah's population is exploding, and Utah County is exploding within that Utah population. And as our downtown is developing quickly, we want to embrace new developments as best we can. And we want to be innovative, and we want to be ahead of the changes that are happening so that we can make sure it's all happening in a healthy way. One of the things that's happening right now in the downtown, the Mill Race project is a good example, where they got a specific zoning change to allow them to go higher, to have a smaller minimum square footage, and a couple other tweaks. We're working on making that change zone wide, DT1, DT2. Now, I just prefaced this because one of my fears with making these changes is we are making it easier and more lucrative for developers to come in and redevelop in our historic downtown. So, should we be concerned about losing some of the historic integrity of our center street if we make it easier and more affordable to do good developments? So I just want you guys to keep that in mind, because I think in the next 5 years, a lot of these things that create the walkability and the charm and the elements of our downtown that we currently love could be in peril. And I think that some of the decisions that we're making right now should be considering what can we do to preserve some of those historic charm elements as we're considering the streetscape along Center Street. Because a good example, and the reason that we're having this discussion with my board, the Los Hermanos building that burned. It burned, we have a new owner, they're doing a good project. The difficulty is that because of the fire, the facade is not salvageable. So do we go with all new glass and steel? Or do we go with something that looks historic, but it's not? And if it comes in and we change this zoning, are there going to be more buildings like the Los Hermanos project that become glass and steel? So I think some of those things are things that should be on the forefront of our minds as we're making these decisions.
Those are great points. I don't feel like that's beyond my pay grade, but that's important. That's critical.
I wanted to add to that too, Clancy, just that, or Quinn, you should know, as we were approaching this, our lens we were using was the city council has asked us to meet their goals for Center Street and making it walkable, welcoming, safe. We're not aesthetic designers. We were kind of guessing in the aesthetic category a lot of times, but one of our main goals was how do we make it safer, especially for pedestrians, and so that it can be that walkable mall people are envisioning. Whereas right now there's so much conflict with the speed in the cars. So that's where we were coming from.
Yeah. How do we make the transportation align with everything else? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that this transportation and mobility is our focus here, but the Planning Commission has the wider view, and there certainly need to be design standards. I hope we don't get any glass and steel buildings downtown. I hope that the planning departments and development have such design standards that those are simply off the table to start with.
I agree fully. I'm actually the chair of the design review committee. And so we talk about that often. And I know that that's not your purview, but I just say that because some of the items on this list do pertain to that overall strategy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm not asking anyone to make any, architectural influences, but one of the ones that's been a high priority for us is installing the entry arch, and it's right here on your list. And that is something that we're pursuing right now, because if we can do more to really designate this area as a special space, and not only that, but right now we're talking about what calming measures can we take as cars enter this space that's supposed to be pedestrian friendly. And as you enter and you drive under one of those arches, it is a very physical difference between getting off the freeway and getting into the historic downtown. So there are things here on your list that I think do a good job of noticing and prioritizing these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I think one thing that might be useful for you is we don't consider all these ideas great ideas. These ideas came from multiple sources. We were asked to rank them. So don't take this list as something that as TMAC members, we're endorsing all of these. We were asked to take a long list and prioritize it.
Yeah.
I think a second thing is you've got a very supportive TMAC. We're very cognizant of the fact we don't have a downtown without business. So yes, we're to focus at transportation, but we know that we need to solve the transportation in a way to keep our downtown business healthy, or there's no reason to walk downtown. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple things to know about us.
Yeah. And maybe I should have started, I assumed you might have read them, Quinn, but should we read the criteria used quickly, or are you familiar with those already?
I'm familiar.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep working through this then. And I'm just going to keep reading them and sharing what I remember from our thoughts, Quinn, and you stop me when you want to discuss it more. So row 9, paint bike sharrows and outside lanes. That's just a pavement message. And we felt like it might make it a little bit more attractive to cyclists and other people, but the overall impact is pretty low. Install flashing 15-mile-per-hour head signs at 600 West and 200 East. We really liked this for safety, but didn't feel like it contributed to aesthetics or experience much. So it was a 0 in those categories. Pedestrian mall signage. There's a wide range of what that is, but we felt like that could improve safety, access, and aesthetics, depending on how it was done. So we actually did rank that pretty highly. The entry arch, row 12 now, it actually was our highest ranked option. So it's interesting you bring that up, in that it would improve safety by very likely slowing cars down. It contributes to the aesthetics, and just makes it a great place to be.
I'd jump back a little to your pedestrian mall signage. I think it's an excellent thing to consider. There's nowhere in our city where signs, streetscapes, wayfinding is pedestrian centric. It's all car.
Yeah.
And even our center street right now, even though it's a pedestrian mall, if you are walking if you imagine the best downtowns in the world, they have so many maps and signage and arrows and directional. They have wayfinding that is designed for walkability and for pedestrians. And in our downtown, we don't have that currently. And I think that's a huge missing piece to the puzzle that I do care a lot about. I really like that item.
Awesome.
And I would comment on that as, somebody who's lived in Provo for a few decades now. I did not know downtown was a pedestrian mall until I was on TMAC. I mean, it's simply not understood.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Row 13, what's our comment on row 13 there, Robert? Oh, okay. Yeah. So the high visibility crosswalks, this is a different style of paint. That comment's just making sure they aren't ugly. Those are safety and could help with the look. This one, I feel like we should just take off the list. It was a huge, the lowest ranked significantly. Yeah, row 14, I don't think is happening. Row 15, rumble strips. So this is kind of like a small speed bump. It's a rumble strip, but that's how you can think of it for those that don't know the terminology. At 500 West and 200 East, to encourage people to slow down. And one reason we like that is because it's something we could test out now. They have temporary options. We can put them there and kind of see what happens.
And make sure that's not a speed bump. We don't want to have people have a negative impression of coming to our downtown. It's just this little subtle reminder that you just crossed a line.
Yeah. It's a speed bump you don't have to slow down for, but it reminds you. Yeah. Row 16, protected left turns along detour route. So let's talk about detour route for a minute. Several of these have to do with incentivizing and optimizing 100 North for people that just want to get past. And it's one we went back and forth a lot on. Is that good because it gets through traffic out of the way? Is it bad because they don't see businesses? What's your thoughts, Quinn?
So we made a presentation to City Council on how to make Center Street more walkable and safe in 2018, and this was on the top of our list. The businesses have collectively decided that they want to divert freeway traffic off of Center Street.
Okay.
We obviously want Center Street to be open for cars so they can see everything and you can access it, and we don't want to make it walkable only. We don't want to eliminate parking, but we want to make sure that there's an easy alternative for people getting to the freeway, because those are the worst offenders that make it unsafe currently. And they make it difficult to back in and out of the 45-degree parking, and the businesses are comfortable losing that traffic.
Excellent. That's really helpful to know. Hearing that, I feel good about how we rated this one then, and that it ranked highly. Row 17, improve lighting at mid-block crosswalks. This is one where the lighting could be a really nice decorative feature. So we like that for safety and aesthetics. Row 18, install RRFBs at mid-block. We like these for safety, but feel like a bunch of flashing lights downtown is sort of it shows that cars are still the priority and peds are guests, and that's opposite of what we want.
Right.
So it ranked lower because of that. Row 19, install variable message signs to warn drivers of upcoming slow speeds. That one didn't rank high. I'm wondering, I guess we put all zeros just because the impact is pretty minimal probably.
Yeah, this was out beyond 500 West. This was out at like 600 or 700.
That's right.
And I think we just felt like the gateway and other things mattered more. This one just didn't rank very high on its effectiveness.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Dave. Install parklets or interim sidewalk widenings with movable planters in existing parking spots. So this gets to our discussion earlier. You know, it would probably improve safety, and probably definitely help aesthetically. But in terms of accessing businesses, we did a -1 because it could hurt parking. But hearing your comment earlier, maybe our access to business category, we should put a 0 because losing a few spots or something like this, it sounds like maybe that's okay.
Yeah, ultimately it depends on the business that you ask. You know, obviously, but one of the reasons that we didn't do the parklets in the end was because engineering said we can't do any of the planter boxes that we want to do. Parks basically said we can't access any of the sidewalks to do it. We have to only take parking to do it. And when we actually calculate where there were parking stalls we could take to put these outside restaurants, there were only like 2, and those businesses got angry. And so we ended up just not doing it because it was such a headache. But I think if we can overcome some of the stuff from engineering and from parks and actually do a good plan, then it would be a lot more acceptable. And when I say overcome the obstacles from engineering are, oh, it's a visual distraction. So you know what that results in? It results in cars having to slow down, which ironically is what we want, but that's not what engineering sees as a priority.
Mm-hmm.
Gwen, I'm going to kind of back up and say that's not what we said. What we said is you were trying to put these all right at those pedestrian crossings, right? We have vehicles, regardless of the speed. We have a ton of vehicles. We're not supportive or supportive of vehicles being on or off Center Street. We're just saying the existing condition is such where we do have a lot of vehicles, whether we want them there or not, and the speed there or not. Putting them around where the current walking across the street without additional improvements on that street is a bad idea, right? Whether that is to notify people, hey, there is a pedestrian here. And because that's some of the problems that we've heard that we had. It's I can't see pedestrians. They're not visible. And if we start cluttering those areas and start making it so, oh, I got a pedestrian coming across, but all I see is a bunch of people eating there, and I can't even see somebody coming across there or understand if somebody's coming across there. How do I know that? Right? Even if I'm doing 15 miles an hour and doing slow. We said there probably needs to other things that need to happen first before we just say, let's just throw something in the parklet. That's what
that's helpful.
We're supportive of that, but there's other features that need to happen before that.
Sean, how much how much of this is volume driven? And okay, I'm not disagreeing with what you just said. We can make improvements to make the crosswalk more visible or whatever, so it pops from the sitting areas on the side. If the volume drops in half, is it going to make it easier to put these parklet kind of things out closer to the traffic?
Absolutely. It's not necessarily, David, just volume, right? Yeah, speed. Absolutely. We're agreeing that speed has something to do with this. It's the feel and the nature of the entire street. I completely agree with everyone here. Center Street right now does not necessarily feel like what would be classified as a pedestrian mall. We do have a high percentage of the vehicles that come down through Center Street are commuting, right? And it's probably somewhere between 1/3 and 50% of the people that come through the downtown are commuting through the downtown area. And so we're agreeing. If the thing is we really want to get that feel and make that, a downtown area, it's the people only coming down there for the downtown businesses, then let's tackle that. But I think we still need to make sure that that's how many vehicles we got coming down there. And because we do have that many vehicles, we do need to make sure from engineering, we got to have whatever those safety improvements are. Those need to be in place.
Okay, let me, I think I understand that. So let me run with your other half of your situation, which was parks and insufficient infrastructure. So clearly in the short term, we can't change that infrastructure, but it's come up in our discussions, a longer term plan, the street gets rebuilt and the infrastructure along the street gets rebuilt. It's expensive. I forget David Harding, do you remember the number? Is it $1 million a block, 2 million a block, 10 million a block? I can't remember. It's a lot.
In a block, but that was like 6 years ago.
So this was, so Dave, back in about 2013, we went through this exercise again. And this was at the time when you had the temple coming in and you had New Skin, and we closed those blocks off, right? You had second.
So at that time, did you have it's a large number.
Yeah, it was $1 million roughly at that time. It was about $1 million per block face.
But we've envisioned at some point in time that will happen.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would like to know from the downtown is as that happens and we design it, should these parklets or whatever, is that what you would call them, these parklets, should the street be designed that the parklets can come and go based on the business owner that has the frontage to that? I mean, should we view parklets as a fixed feature along the street, or is it a tool that we put the parklets, assuming we solve those other traffic engineering problems, should the parklets be viewed as solving problems around a business, or should it be something uniform that we build all along the street and it becomes permanent?
That's a fantastic question. I don't necessarily have an answer to that. I would say, obviously, we want to make sure that if a business leaves, we're not stuck with a funny infrastructure that doesn't make sense. But restaurants are unique in that if you have a grease trap and you have a hood and you've got $150,000, $250,000 worth of infrastructure in that space, if a restaurant leaves, a restaurant's going to replace it. It's pretty rare, as far as I know, it's only happened once in our downtown since I've been doing this, that we have a restaurant that becomes retail. So if we do build a parklet outside of a restaurant, there's a very good chance there will always be a restaurant there.
And I think for them to be effective, permanence allows a better design that is going to be more effective too. The temporaries are nice, but
yeah, because I think a piece that needs to be designed into these parklets, if they're permanent, well, whether they're permanent or not, is landscaping. And it's difficult to include landscaping if it's temporary.
Yeah.
And Dave, are you talking something similar to like Park City? So you have temporary, they set out there, they go and they put it in their parking area, and they've got this big boarded area that gets moved off. You know, October, they've got a date, October, that gets moved off because of snow and all. Is that what you're thinking of?
That's what I was thinking. I guess a middle road is, do we stub everything so that we have the electrical and the power where we need it, so that because we don't know what's going to happen necessarily from 3rd to 5th.
And
and
I can tell you,
describing, as that develops, we might have some restaurants might go down there. We don't know exactly where they're going to show up and stay. So,
and I can tell you, engineering was supportive of that stuff. We walked with you, Quinn, and said, hey, we're absolutely in these parking areas that are just right near those walkable areas. Let's use that area. If the business wants to do something temporary out there, and that we are very supportive of that. It's just temporary during the time of use that people want to go outside and sit and use that area. Highly supportive. But it becomes a little bit of a trade-off of the parking that you get to lose. But that seems to be a more important use.
I want to give Dave Harding a minute to share some of his thoughts.
Thank you, Clancy. I'm fascinated with this discussion. This is exciting stuff. I appreciated what Clancy said at the beginning, that, you know, one, there's a lot of ideas on this, and in a way, it's a very high level, just kind of summary or ranking of ideas, so we know what things to focus on. I think it's inevitable to kind of get into like, how would this fit in, and what are some of the details, but I do support, you know, keeping it high level, kind of a quick analysis, and then the details will be worked out later. One thing that hasn't been discussed, but it's, I think, related to that, is just timing and sequencing. I think there's a lot of things on here that probably wouldn't work right out of the gate, but as we get closer to achieving our vision of this being a pedestrian first, a destination, not a thoroughfare, I think a lot of these options become more and more viable, and it sounds like parklets are one of those. And there was one other thing I wanted to say. So I think, the one other thing I wanted to say is we've talked about that it is a pedestrian mall, that it has a lot of crosswalks. I believe from the state designation as a pedestrian mall means that, like, at least in theory, the whole section is like one giant crosswalk. And obviously that's not how it's functioning right now. But as the time goes on, as we sequence through these things, as we get closer to that, then hopefully it functions a lot more like that. And some of these ideas, may not work now, but let's score them kind of, not looking at how things have to be timed or sequenced.
Right. We'll work those things out later. Yeah, I appreciate that, Dave. Thanks. So I'm going to propose that two things for this row 20. I'm going to propose that we remove the or interim part, because I do think these would need to be permanent, and that we change the -1 to a 0 based on the feedback we've heard. We'd done a -1 because we'd lose some parking.
Yeah. Are you just doing that to make sure that we think some kind of parklets is a good idea and should be high priority, but we don't want to get messed up in the implementation details? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
And I'll add, Shane, you're like the parent that tells me I can't have candy when I want it. You're here to keep us in check. Sorry, I resist some of your wisdom often, but I think you added something really important today that I didn't gather last time we talked, and I wrote it down as a quote. We need other safety improvements first before we can put those parklets in those planter areas by the crosswalks. And I think that's a really important piece that we can figure out and take off a bite at a time of those safety improvements, so that we can convert those parklets closer to those crosswalks.
Absolutely. And I think that's some of the thing that we're looking for from this committee, Quinn, and so that we're not, as engineering is not just making what that choice should be for those safety improvements, but we're taking all the stakeholders' points of view so that we can come to the appropriate, kind of that process to install those improvements, and that nobody feels like they're the one that's taking kind of the brunt of what they would like to see Center Street to be.
Yeah, thank you both. Is everyone on the committee, are you okay with what I proposed there? Anyone disagree? I got a thumbs up from Joy.
I like getting the number up, because I think that represents that is representative of the conversation we just had.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, thank you. Row 21, install signal at 400 West and or 100 West. We felt like this would probably be good for safety, but again, is a little bit against the pedestrian first message. So it did not rank really highly. Row 22, create.
I have talked about that last one because if we can stop traffic for pedestrians, I think one of the reasons that it doesn't feel safe to cross at those areas is because there's not a light forcing the cars to stop. But you're right, it is more car centric. I get what you mean. I feel like we're also forcing the pedestrian to stop though and wait 2 minutes before they cross. Yeah, that's true.
With a raised intersection or something that slows them down, slows vehicles down other ways, they have more freedom, kind of.
Yeah.
You can make a signal so that it's the priority for the pedestrians, not the cars.
But you still have to wait for the cycle. You still have to wait for the yellow and the red cycle. I guess that's not real long though.
No, we can change those as short and long as we want those to be.
So the lights could be put in there that are just essentially there for the pedestrians. So they push a ped button and it stops the traffic.
That's basically what that light would be for. That would basically be just a strictly pedestrian light.
But what it does is it brings more of a car feel to the street, and it makes the pedestrian feel like they're the visitor, and the car, they have to interrupt the cars. Do you have feedback on it? I mean, we went back and forth on this a little bit. And we decided it maybe not to put them in there, but do you have an
It
opinion
all
from
depends
downtown?
on how you want to kind of signal that out. I'm not, again, I want to make sure.
I meant do
I'm
from
not
downtown.
recommending, we're just saying it's a possibility, but
Right.
you can do a signal so that it is strictly basically for pedestrian.
Yeah, sorry. So Shane, I didn't mean response from you because I get that. I meant a response from our visitor from
Oh.
downtown. How would you rank this?
Yeah,
Should we put pedestrian traffic signals in there or leave it the way it is and try to treat it some other ways?
that's a hard thing to answer because it's at what cost do we put it in? If
And
money
they
were
are
not,
expensive.
if money were not an object, I mean, I visited with Shane about this, about putting lights in there. We talked about how that would be helpful, but Clancy's also right. It does. I don't know that adds to the environment. There's pros and cons. I'd say we're split, but we would support it if it was a decision you made. But if you guys feel that's not a good idea, we support that as well. But yeah.
Okay.
And I worry about if you get signals at every single intersection, clogging up with the parking coming out at the 45-degree angle, like making it, if you have cars stopping constantly, it makes the flow a little bit harder for multiple modes of transportation. So I'm a little hesitant about that one.
Yeah, you can. Here's what we can do. And just so you say, we could prioritize everything so that it's for pedestrians. It can make it so that you're right. It's going to be very difficult for vehicles and very uncomfortable for cars, right? And that may be for the commuters. I definitely don't want to go because I'm going to sit there a long time on Center Street and getting through there.
And then they take one.
So it's going to start to force those people off that road. So it could be used as something that starts to move people away as using Center Street as some kind of traffic to the I-15.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of these other options, like a raised crosswalk or the entry arch or things like that, that's going to discourage drivers and improve the aesthetics. Whereas, I mean, if you look at great pedestrian spaces, there's no lights. I mean, because pedestrians don't want to have to stop and wait for anybody. And so I see what you're saying there, Shane. It could discourage cars a lot, but I think it wouldn't contribute in any other way. So I feel good about how we've rated it, I think, because it could improve safety, but we put zeros everywhere else because it's a little bit.
Yeah, I think we leave it that way. There is no reason there to put it there for cars.
Right.
Okay. So why add more car infrastructure to the street?
Yeah.
And the pedestrian has to push the pedestrian button.
It sends the wrong message,
cross,
right?
and then wait. Obviously, you can't instantly change.
Yeah. Okay. 22 ended up ranking very low. So create parking protected bike lane by converting angle parking to parallel. So Quinn, this is putting a bike lane inside the parking between the sidewalk and the parking. Are you nodding your head?
Nope, I don't like that.
Okay, it ranked really, really low. So sounds like we're all on the same page. Install Hawk pedestrian signal at 400 West. This kind of goes with the discussion on row 21 or 19 or shoot, we got two numbers now. two rows above. So I think we're good there. It would help, but again, it forces people to wait. 24, 22, install chicanes. This completely kind of creates a more curvilinear route rather than just a straight road through downtown. And we felt like it would totally change the character of downtown and be incredibly expensive as well. So it ranked extremely low. Next one, construct median walkway for center parking access to crosswalks. This is one where improving the walkways through the middle of the street. We love that idea. It'd be good for safety. It could be good for aesthetics. Executing it is a whole other story. So we've kind of decided to ignore the execution part of this item and how we ranked it. It may never happen because it can't be done, but it did rank highly because of safety and kind of aesthetic improvements. But I'm curious your thoughts on this one, Quinn.
My only fear is this. I'm afraid that this would have to come at the cost of trees.
Yep, exactly.
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think we need the trees. I think currently you can figure out how to get to the crosswalk.
Yeah. So should we, TMAC, should we rank the aesthetics category? We did 1.5. Should we rank it lower on the assumption that it would require removing trees and other things, maybe?
I think it's a lot more than aesthetics though, because it's shade. It's there's so much that trees provide pedestrian environment.
Right. And that column E, it's our experience and aesthetics column. So
Well, and I think maybe you clear it'd be removing existing trees, because you could redesign it so that you keep trees, right? And unfortunately, they're going to take time to grow back to something substantial, but it'd be really the loss of existing trees would be the problem, right?
Okay.
I don't know. Do we want to adjust our ranking here? Or are we good with what we have? Anybody?
Well, I'd be interested in getting some more feedback from downtown. So some of the things we thought through was, I mean, all of us that come to downtown right now, it's uncomfortable to park there, and then you go and you can't really walk down the middle, and you're a little afraid to cross the traffic and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we all feel the tension of that. David Harding's point of view was once we get the volume of traffic down, once we do some of these things, we want it to feel more like a parking lot. So I park and I just it's like walking across the parking lot. So part of us we kind of felt like we were solving a short-term problem that may go away in the future, or we would like to go away in the future. Do you have any comments on this type of thinking that we went through?
Yeah, I agree. I agree fully. I think if we can get the cars down to 15 and we can get more of the commuters off onto 3rd South or 100 North, I think a lot of the problems like this one will resolve themselves. Yeah.
Okay. So Clancy, probably a high score is indicating we're asking or we're recommending it, and we've always been very mixed on this one. So
yeah,
I mean, we like to have it. We don't like. Well, there's not a lot of space without giving up parking or trees or.
Question is, do you want engineering to treat it like a parking lot? And I'm going to ask this in the sense that we could do things right now to make it a parking lot. And let me explain. Right now, the existing signals at the major cross streets, we can make it so the through movement through Center Street is basically you're coming onto those major streets like it's a parking lot, meaning a driveway, meaning we don't give a lot of time for you as a car to drive through, a lot of time and those things to get through there through a light. We would give you very little time, and it would make that feel like a parking lot.
So again, it's probably a timing thing. If you decided to implement, or if the ultimate decision is to implement a strategy like that until we've actually got the things in place and get more traffic going on 100 North, and then we could consider that kind of a strategy.
Yeah, or we do it.
I can already tell you somewhat that has already that happened. So when they were reconstructing 5th West, and Quinn, you may have some idea on this, there was some severe backup on 500 West going down Center Street. It was more treated like a parking lot, right? Just because of the condition, less time was given to Center Street because of 5th West. That was at that time, that's what that looked like or felt like. That felt like a parking lot.
So Clancy, I think what Shane just recommended is, do we change this to state that we want them to do things to make it feel more like a parking lot to solve this underlying issue, rather than putting in a median walkway? I think that's what Shane was saying.
But is that a whole new idea, or
I don't know. Well, if we rank this high, it's going to send the message that we want this median walkway. What we want is we want to solve the problem of the person that just parked their car safely getting across the street. and feeling comfortable doing it. That's what we were ranking high, not necessarily the method, because we saw all kinds of problems with the method.
Yeah.
But this one is 5+ years in the future.
Well, and on that timing, I mean, if council decides they love an idea, they could do it next year if they put the money in it, you know.
And I'm hesitant to rank this one too lowly, because I feel like one of the reasons we like this idea, or I like this idea, is that median walkway is helpful for certain populations, right? Like if you're in a wheelchair, maybe we have separate handicap parking elsewhere, but or if you have children, right? Then it gets a little scary just saying, sure, I'm going to walk across the street, even if there's no crosswalk there or no sidewalk down the middle where I've parked. So I am a little hesitant to rank that one. I would not want to lose the trees at all, but but there needs to be some sort of, if we have parking in the middle of the road, there's that key question of how do we get them safely to where the businesses are.
Here's what I recommend, Clancy. Do you think you could write some dialogue that explains what we mean and just leave the ranking?
Yeah, I wonder. That's a good question I was going to bring up at the end for Robert.
Robert could write the dialogue to go with it.
when this goes to council, like, should we write a little description of each thing and some thoughts, or what? How are they going to receive this and look at this?
Oh, yeah, my anticipation is that each of these would have some sort of explanation, kind of the thought process that you all went through, justification of why you ranked it the way you did. Otherwise, I don't think this report is very valuable to them.
Yeah. Okay.
He's got Dave will present it for you. He's here and he's got his hand up too.
That's right. And you can remember.
Yeah, Dave, is your hand just not? Yeah, I think he just didn't put it down from last time.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just didn't put it back down.
That's okay.
So, maybe that's how we deal with it, Clancy. Let's leave it the way it is, and let's make sure we document it right.
Okay. I've got a lot of notes. So maybe after this meeting, I'll take a minute to type that up for all these and then send it to the committee to comment and add. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And I would welcome the chair or another representative of the committee presenting to the council. They're going to hear my thoughts and opinions. I'd rather not have them questioning whether what I'm presenting is being filtered as well. So I'd prefer it coming directly from the committee.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to join that meeting if you'd like, Dave, for sure. Okay, so we'll leave this one where it is, and in the explanation we'll kind of discuss the trees and other issues. Okay, row 2725. Remove median parking to construct median plaza linear park for dining, recreation, etc. So this is removing all parking in the middle for kind of a large park dining hangout area. We liked it for safety. We didn't like it because I think we feel like that's too much parking to lose, probably is the way we did the -2, but it would look amazing and be great. So I don't know. I think I still like this where it ranks, but any other thoughts?
It looks like Barcelona's Rambla, whatever the area. You have median sort of park walkway, and then there are stores then on the.
What's the opinion of downtown? Do you think that people would use a park in the middle in some time? How would it be used? How would the business respond to this kind of an idea?
I love the idea. I am worried. It's more difficult if it's in the median than if it's on the sidewalk side, closer to the business, because we're going to need serious commitment from the businesses to help maintain these. If they're going to be bussing those tables and taking care of those trash cans, for example, it's a lot more difficult if it's in the median for these restaurants and business owners. But overall, the theory is fantastic, and I would love to see it. I just want to make sure it's done right.
So that's a great point. And looking at our next row, it's basically the same idea, but for the business side. And so convert all angle parking to parallel. So removes a lot of parking, but opens a lot more dining space. I feel like maybe we should rank that one a little higher than so I'm saying row 28, 26 should rank more highly than 27, 25 because of what Quinn said. It'd be easier to maintain and it wouldn't remove quite as much parking.
You also notice that we rank these at a -2 for parking, right?
Right.
Right.
I mean, for, people having access, these are really driven by the other positive aspects. We know that it takes parking away.
Mhm. So I think maybe for 26, 28, we change column D, which is convenient access to businesses, to just a -1, since these would be easier to use and some parking is maintained, maybe. Can you do that, Robert? We'll see what the number is. Maybe -1.5. I don't know. What's everyone else think?
What you're trying to do is say if parking could be given up, based on what we heard, their first choice may to do something closer to their business than out in the middle. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I want it to be clear that this is better than the option right above it.
Well, and I would also say bigger picture. I don't think we would support this all over downtown. I think we love this where it makes sense, because if you actually look at a map and see where the restaurants are, you have clusters of restaurants.
Right.
And then you have entire blocks with no restaurants, which obviously won't make sense there. And so I don't think this plan should be rolled out, if it ever does, all the way along, but it should be maybe there's one on the first block and there's one on the last block, because that's where we've got clusters of restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Clancy, I see maybe that -1.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like 110 to, I feel like that's more scale wise where it fits.
I think that's another thing that we should capture and somehow get to council in our recommendation, because I have always just kind of viewed Center Street as a uniform thing. And what I'm learning in this conversation is we shouldn't think of it as uniform all the way down it. Maybe we should create areas that are good for dining and these different uses. And so that means we're not giving up parking everywhere. We're doing something in an area to match the businesses right around that. That's not something as a group that we'd captured without talking to downtown today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be very helpful for engineering, Quinn, and identifying those specific areas that would work, or, almost a land use planning effort. This is what we would like those to be designated.
Yeah, we've never considered the land use planning. We just looked at it as uniform. That's a really key concept that we should somehow make sure gets remembered.
Because then we can focus some of those safety improvements at those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Clancy, I wanted to point out, I think we skipped row 24, the raised crosswalk.
You're right, and that's an important one. Thank you. Install raised crosswalks at mid-block crossings and at 500 West. So this is all about slowing cars down. And so we ranked it really highly for safety, and as well kind of enhancing the destination. So slowing cars down this much would be really great for the destination. Thoughts on this, Quinn? I don't know, are you guys supportive of that, or what do you think?
Yeah. This again, similar to changing the light patterns and diverting through traffic to 100 North. Elevated crosswalks was another one that was on our list and our presentation in 2018. I do know that Shane's expressed concerns about things like snow plows and such, and I do know that is a serious concern. But we do know that there are other elevated crosswalks at BYU and in other snowy communities. It's probably a nightmare, but it's overcomable. So I wonder if there's a way to figure out a solution.
Yeah. Okay.
I think where we would be at is, I think engineering's not saying necessarily absolutely. I mean, policy right now, we don't want to be doing any kind of raised things. For us, it's more the condition is, based on the existing condition, you have so much volume of cars, that would not be right initially. It would be our recommendation of first. I think later, to help with those things is you bring volume down from 20,000 down, we would say, maybe that does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. row 29, 27, remove all parking everywhere for more dining space. So this fits with the above and ranks much.
See, what we're
lower.
trying to do here is we're trying to move it. If business decides, it can become a pedestrian mall if somehow people are still coming here.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll down. Robert or whoever's in control. Okay, I lost my spot. There we go. Okay, raise intersections at 100, 300, and 400. So similar to raise crosswalks, but it's the entire intersection. Same effect, just a different approach to it. 3129, reduce the speed limit on University Avenue and 500 West. We feel like this really wouldn't have any impact to Center Street, honestly. So we just got zeros. Change the surface material, so making everything like a paver or brick or something like that. We feel like it could slow cars down and could really enhance the look and experience. So it looks like it ranked pretty well, not the highest, but pretty well. 31, 33, and 35, 37 are very similar. So let's look at both of those at the same time. So both of these are looking at 100 West and 400 West. So 31 here, block traffic from entering Center Street from 100 West and 400 West. So with this one, we would extend the median through the intersection, thus making those streets a right in, right out only. This initially we liked, but then decided it really wouldn't change much, and it might actually increase speeds because you push that median through an intersection. When cars hit an intersection, they inherently, people tend to slow down a little bit because there's more happening. So if we push the median through and that interruption is no longer there, it actually could increase speeds. It might look nice, but speeds would actually possibly go up. Now looking at 35, 37, the last item, this is completely blocking those streets entering from the north. So 100 West and 400 West are already blocked on the south side of Center. This would be blocking them on the north side as well. So essentially it's like a little cul-de-sac street, and extending the median. And with that, we've talked about how the end of those streets, 100 West and 400 West, would become sort of a pedestrian plaza where there could be tables out permanently for people to sit and eat or gather. It creates gathering spaces there. So we really like this last one and ranked it highly because it creates that pedestrian gathering space for people.
Yeah.
So anyway, thoughts on that, Quinn?
I like it. I think it's a good idea but I think it's only a good idea if the blockage of traffic is with tables and humans. If it becomes a pedestrian area, I think that's the only reason that's a good idea. But if it is with pedestrians, I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
There's an item that's not on this list, but I think it'd be worth considering if it's not too late. And it may sound obscure, but it's not, I promise. And it is just events downtown. I've had this desire to educate the public. There was a comment earlier, I think it was Crystal, that said she didn't realize downtown was a pedestrian mall, even though she lived here forever. I think we have loads and loads of our residents that are in that boat. And so I'm also the chair of the farmers market, and we chose to move the farmers market to Center Street a number of years ago. And part of our agenda and our plan was not just for the farmers market to be successful, but also to show the community that there were things happening downtown and to educate the community on how to park elsewhere and walk. And I think that the more often we have street closures like that and events like that happening, it helps to educate and acclimate our community to that sort of behavior and that sort of treatment to downtown. Now, why I think it would be worth value considering as an item on your list, right now, to do an event and shut down Center Street is like the gauntlet through hell. It is so impossible to get that permit and those events and to go through all these freaking departments and hoops and permits. It is bonkers. And I think if we had some energy to say why that sort of activity is valuable for our community and for the future of transportation, we could encourage city council and or the mayor to help clean up that process to make it more attainable for someone who wants to do an event downtown.
So Quinn, help me, because I know in engineering is highly supportive of this. I can tell you from my perspective, we're on board. We would prefer to keep Center Street usable as the event. You know, that is the priority. Help me understand from where is some of the catch up on that? Just this kind of just on the side really quick while I have you.
It's I don't think it's any one department's fault, really. I think it's just that the system that the city uses where, you know, part of it's online with one department, part of it's a piece of paper you got to hand in. And then there's a lot of vagueness about who endorses and supports and what kind of insurance you need. And then the traffic plans with the state versus the city. And if it's a state, turn off the insurance level. And just to get answers, like if engineering has a question, I don't get an email. I have to log into the portal to see that they had a question. It's just the whole process of getting the permit is a disaster. And I don't think that that anyone's doing a bad job. It's just the process sucks.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
I think that'd be worth adding, Clancy, because it moves us towards
getting people comfortable with parking and
it's joy is several it goes with Laurie's point. That's a good suggestion, I think.
Yeah, let's go ahead and add that then, if you don't mind, Robert. Simplify the process of holding events downtown or something. Yeah.
Can I say something?
But you've definitely convinced me to never go try to do an event downtown. Sounds like it's a lot of work.
Yeah, we just did that car show weeks ago, and it was the first time that I personally have been the applicant. So I've been helping other people for years, but that was the first time I did it myself, and it was very eye-opening.
You want to add something, Javin?
Yeah, I think the other thing that's important to think about when people are trying to find a place to park downtown is our wayfinding system that we have. We've installed some of it. Part is going to be installed next phase coming up next week or so, anytime. But there's a substantial amount that's left to be installed. And if we were able to install this package as it was presented to us a few years ago, I think it could, the more that we have, the more that it helps people to know where to park, where it's allowed. So then the frustration of finding parking when Center Street's closed for events is not as high as it could have been.
Yeah. Thanks, Javin. So quickly, how would we rank this events process improvements? Okay, so pedestrian safety and comfort while supporting multiple modes.
I think the way it impacts pedestrian safety is it educates people that it's getting across that point that it's. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this is like ones across the board because it's all secondary impact. Like my immediate thought. Yeah, and Quinn, for your information, one is good, pretty good here. It sounds bad, but it's pretty good. I don't know. That's my initial idea.
So Robert, try ones. Tell us what the score is.
Or 1110. I don't know that we could do an interim attempt on this because it's
This is really a different nature compared to other kind of engineering, construction, whatever those things. The last one is procedure improvements. So different category to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That number, I mean. I feel
So
like
Robert,
that
if,
number-
Robert, if you make the fourth column also a 1, because this is like an interim strategy.
One there.
I don't know. What's everyone think? I agree. This one's definitely a little bit of a departure from other ideas, but
Yeah.
it's worth including.
But an important one.
Yeah.
Can we go back and finish those few that we missed, Clancy?
Yeah. Let's do that, and then we'll get back to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we finished.
No, you're good.
We were really close.
A few because they
Oh,
were
sorry.
similar. 34, 32, remove 1 lane of traffic each direction. Great for safety, not good for access because it literally becomes a really bad parking lot. So we don't like this idea. We've talked about this one a lot, and I feel like we've heard from you in the past on this, Quinn. But I don't know, any thoughts on removing a lane?
I think, Dave Harding and I actually like years ago talked about some of these ideas. And my answer then is the answer that we just talked about with events. I think that it needs to be baby steps. I think that that's possible someday, but I think acclimating the community to use downtown as a walkable space through occasional shutdowns is the segue to get us to that point. I think it could be beneficial. I just don't see it anytime in the near future.
Yeah. Okay, 35, 33, realign Center Street to 100 North at 5th West and at 200 East. So this is super optimizing the 100 North bypass route. So it ranks really high. To be honest, it is very, very expensive and maybe cost prohibitive, but I think it's fair that we rank this highly to get that message out.
So this is putting a curve in the road. It would mean certain buildings currently would have to go. It's a pretty drastic measure.
Right.
But it would definitely get the traffic off a center because it would smoothly go off a center and come back on.
Parking lot of that supermarket has to go.
Yeah. 34, 36, completely closed Center Street to vehicular traffic. Ranked pretty low. And I feel like we've heard that businesses don't really want this, and I think we agree on that. So in some ways, I think we should remove this from the list unless that has changed. But are agreed on that, Quinn, or has it?
Yeah, fully. Yeah. Okay. Again, my answer is the events. I think we need to do years of more regular events and street closures till our community's ready.
Yeah. And I want to make sure everyone saw what Dave chatted. I like this idea. We shut down Center Street Friday afternoon through Sunday evening. That could be a really cool thing to try and let people play and eat and do whatever they want.
I think that happened during COVID. A lot of cities just ended up doing that on like Fridays or whatever.
Right. Yeah. That'd be cool. So now back to our new item, events process improvements. Do we just want to keep those ones? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I'm fine with that. And then let's add narrative to it.
Yeah.
Because
That's
I think
my vote.
Quinn says the process needs to be improved, which clearly it does. But what he's really saying is we need to start holding events that happen. And it's not as the process is important, but it's actually the holding of the event that will start helping the character of Center Street change. So I think those are slightly different things. And holding the events, you could do interim way more than changing the whole process.
So could you put in parentheses on that, Robert, event process improvements, and then like more events downtown or something like that? That's a good point.
And I'll say every time there's an event downtown, the mayor's office gets an angry voicemail from a business owner or a resident or whatever. And so last year, or I guess it was 2019, we had a discussion with all the businesses and just said, listen, some of you in this room complain when we have some events. So I just need to know, do you want events to stop? And everyone said, no, absolutely not. We want more events. And then they just said, well, it was just that one really irritated me because the signage was bad and whatever. And so ultimately, we did come to a very clear consensus that both the residents and the businesses want more events. They just want them to happen in a good way.
Okay. I want to wrap up here soon. Could we, Robert, could you sort the total score now, highest to lowest? And let's just quickly scroll through the list that way and see them from top ranked to bottom. Or you can use the little arrow on total.
Yeah, you can use the little arrow.
Click on the total score cell.
Click on the G.
And then that right there, and click sort largest to smallest. Yeah. Perfect.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Entry arch, raised crosswalks, raised intersections, realign, improved lighting. I'm just going to let everyone look through this themselves.
Some of these we would need to look at and make comments on when they're very similar to each other.
Yeah.
Right. And say which one would be preferred and why.
Mm-hmm. I'm ready to scroll if everyone else is.
Quinn, is there anything you think should be on this list that wasn't on this list?
I think just events was the only one that came to mind.
I think we have a few negative scores down here, don't we?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, understandable. So,
Well, this is, or sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Clancy.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I want to wrap up here. Thanks for everyone's time. Quinn, we really appreciate you being here and sharing your insight. Like I said earlier, if you could send this to the group, or at least to me, Robert, I'll make an attempt at putting kind of the description explanation and then send it back to the group to review, and then by early next week it could be done and ready for you to send to council or schedule whatever you need to.
I think that'd be great.
And I'll add this, my board voted yesterday that my program is going to spend some budget on doing a little bit of research and putting together some preliminary renderings for the entrance arch.
Cool.
So that once we bring that to city council to talk about budget, it's a little bit easier to sort of visualize.
Yeah, excellent.
Clancy, I have one more quick question for Quinn, if that's okay.
Yeah.
As we were going through this list, many of the items we said, well, this will be more effective later once we get traffic down, right? Then we can do this later. I'm curious, Quinn, with this idea of trying to get the through traffic to go to 100 North or 3rd South, what do the downtown businesses think is the way to do that?
I think favorable light patterns, and possibly some of these measures like the raised intersections, raised crosswalks, maybe even slowing down light patterns on Center Street. I think that both the slowing things down a little bit on Center and speeding things up a little on 100 and 300, the plan and the goal, that in addition to things like regular events, will acclimate our community to change their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
A quick thought on this. We've said that a lot and it's correct, but I do think and really it's probably the council actually, we have to make a choice at some point to pick something that will be the disruptive event or disruptive change that will make people go to 100 North. We can incentivize it, but we are creatures of habit. So I think there has to be one catalyst that pushes that, the first raised crosswalk or something like that. So a lot of this is better once it happens, but I do think a lot of this works better when traffic is down, but there has to be an initial event that makes the initial big push, I think. It won't all just happen by itself.
Well, I'd recommend, and we're already doing it, 100 North becomes easy. As soon as that's become the easier route, we make Center Street a little more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I'm talking from a driver perspective.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much, everybody. Any final thoughts before we close?
I have one final one, Clancy. Just to let y'all know, as we're talking about, especially as we're talking about holding more events on Center Street, as Shane said, we're very supportive of that. And maybe Quinn, I can work with you to try to do some kind of standardized traffic control plans to where, you know, if you're closing down a certain section of Center Street, this is the plan that you'll use. You'll still need to get that approved through UDOT when it does stuff on their roadways, but at least we'll have which one you need to submit for whichever section of Center Street. The other thing too that I was saying is UDOT's very on board. They're very supportive of helping us test out and try out things as we move forward. So as we close down Center Street, we actually did for that car show and for the Latin American Festival, is they are testing out different timing patterns to try to encourage people to go up to 100 North. So before we implement one that may or may not work, especially as we have these type of events where we're closing Center Street, they are supportive of testing out new timing patterns to encourage people to go up to 100 North.
Rob, you are an angel. That suggestion that you have pre-approved traffic plans is so fantastic, and I have no idea why someone else hasn't thought of that yet. That's a great idea.
That'd be awesome. Dave Harding, did you want to add something before we adjourn?
Yeah, just really quick. I've been thinking about the suggestion, like, hey, we can just really change the timing of lights on Center Street and back everyone up like we did, before when we had the construction, and we've got full blocks that are just, standing traffic. And I really don't think that's the way we want to go. If we can bottleneck the entrances at First East and at Fifth West, and if that's where the backup can be, so it extends it on Center Street towards Sixth West and not actually on the historic portion, and give just kind of signal to the people like, hey, you have to stay in line longer if you're going to take Center Street, and you can go much faster by going up to First North. I think that's where we want to do it, and not turn like the actual lanes on Center Street into a stop and go parking lot. I think that would be a really bad idea.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Dave. Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Oh, sorry, someone else saying something.
All right, I was just going to say, Clancy, I will send this out to all of you. If you go ahead and put your thoughts in, that'd be great, and then we can get this to council.
Okay. Thanks, Robert, and thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you.
Hey, see ya.
Thanks.